Hi, I'm Tim and thanks for watching this video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at this, which is the Grandstream tri-band Wi-Fi 7 access point, and it's the model number GWN7672. So we'll get this unboxed, take a look, go through one or two of the specs, and then we'll get it set up with a basic internet access and a wireless SSID setup. So keep watching this video and we'll get right to it now. And here we are. So in the box you get the usual certificate of regulatory information, the Grandstream quick installation guide, which provides a comprehensive instructions on how to use it. They also provide a PDF online on their website as well. We get a packet of fixing screws to mount the access point with. We get the usual sticky label with the MAC address, admin password, and so on. Now they also provide the admin password on the back of the device, so there's also a label on the bottom of the device there. So you also get two mounting plates. Now this one goes onto the back of the access point itself, so it mounts on by twisting. So you line it up like so and then twist it and it locks into place. So once you've done that, you can then release it by lifting the little recess there, and then that will release the mounting bracket. Now if you're mounting the access point on, say, a drop ceiling, then you might need to use both plates. Now these would be, for example, put on like so, so the ceiling would be between the two plates, and then you would use the fixing screws that's provided and I've just shown you in the plastic bag there, and then tighten up the two plates together, and then the access point would be mounted underneath that like so. So with those to one side, we'll take a look at the access point itself. Now as you can see, this is a slightly new design compared to the old style of Grandstream access points. Now this has a curved to the front, so rather than having the sharper edges on the old access point, so there would be a sharp edge around the access point there, they've actually streamlined it and made it a lot smoother and cleaner lines. Now there's still a recessed part in the center here, so it's slightly recessed, but as you can see it's more of a sort of dome shape to the actual surface area, and it resembles, I would say, another brand of access points. So it's cleaner, it looks tidier on the ceiling. Whether you ceiling mount it or wall mount it, it would look ideal in both environments. Now on the front we've got the Grandstream logo, and then at the top here on the access point we've got Wi-Fi 7, and in the center we've got the usual tri-status LED, so it's tricolour, so it lights up purple, orange and green, I believe. On the rear of the access point, now this is made of metal on the rear, so it acts as a heatsink as well, so all this rear part here is actually metal. The front is actually made of ABS, so it's strongly constructed, and then on the rear we have the Grandstream label with the model number, and then as I've said earlier we have the serial number, the MAC address, and also the default admin password on the label there. Now also on the rear of the access point there's two 5 gigabits per second RJ45 network ports. Now I'm not 100% sure why they've decided to go with 5 gigabits per second, as far as I'm aware there are currently no network switches that Grandstream provide that have 5 gigabits per second RJ45 ports on them. Now there are SFP plus ports, of course. Now whether these support 5 gigabits per second I'm not 100% sure. However, there are two of these ports and they do work at both 1 gigabits per second and also 2.5 gigabits per second. Now I've already tested this and it does link up at 2.5 gigabits per second to my Grandstream GWN7822P power over Ethernet network switch. So it will link at 2.5 gigabits as well as 1 gigabits per second. Now, one of these ports is PoE+, so it requires PoE+, which is 802.3 AT, and it supports up to 30 watts of power for the PoE in port, which is the first port here on the left hand side. Now it supports, as I've said, with the two 5 gigabits ports, it can support up to 5 gigabits per second of aggregate wired throughput. So you could actually, I suppose, link aggregate these two ports at the back here. So do a link aggregation on them so that you get 5 gigabits per second using two 2.5 gigabits per second ports on your network switch. And what I'll actually do is I'll test this and probably do an upcoming video where we do a link aggregation for this access point. So keep a lookout for that video in future. Now carrying on with the specs, it has an integrated Wi-Fi 7 tri-band, and it supports 2x2x2 multi-user MIMO with MLO and also 4K QAM. The coverage for this is up to 175 meters, and it can support up to 384 concurrent Wi-Fi client devices. It also has advanced QoS to ensure real-time performance and low latency applications. And also it has, which most of Grandstream access points do, the anti-hacking secure boot and critical data control lockdown via digital signatures. It also has the usual embedded controller, which can manage up to 50 local GWN access points, and you can also adopt this into the cloud system, which is their GDMS networking, which can offer unlimited access point management. And also Grandstream offer their local controller called GWN Manager, which you can also use to manage these access points with. For the Wi-Fi data rates for 2.4, it can support up to 688 megabits per second. For the 5G, it can support up to 4,320 megabits per second, and the 6G up to 5,765 megabits per second. Also, I forgot to say on the back is next to the, actually between, in the center of the two Ethernet ports, there's actually a recessed reset button there, which you can use to factory reset the device, which you can also do in the management interface as well. So you can actually reset the device there. But if it fails to respond for some reason, all you need to do is put a pin in the hole there and use the factory reset button. So that's the general specs for this Grandstream Wi-Fi 7 tri-band access point. So what we'll do now is log in to the access point, get it powered on first, of course, log in, and then we'll get it set up with a basic Wireless Network SSID. So we'll get right to that now. So here we are at the login prompt for the GWN7672. Now, just to make you aware, when you first power on the access point, the LED will turn green, and then after a couple of minutes, it will then turn purple. So once it turns purple, you are ready to access the web interface. So with the username, it's always a default of admin, and then the password, as I've said when we did the unboxing, is that the password is on the back of the device or the actual additional label. So we'll paste in the password, and then for the next option, you'll see we've got primary. Now if we pull this drop down, you'll see we've then got subordinate. Now if you're using this access point to manage other access points, or it's just managing itself, then you would choose primary. But if you're using this access point with other access points and you have, say, another access point that's being the primary, then you would select subordinate, and then the other access point would be used to manage this GWN7672. So hopefully that makes sense. So we'll be selecting primary, as I'll just be using this access point on its own for the time being for this video purpose. So once we've selected those options, keyed in the admin username and password, we'll click sign in. Now once it's loaded initially, it does take a few seconds for it to load on the initial setup. So once we're in, we will get the setup wizard as you'll see. So all we need to do is go through the setup wizard. We can click next. We select our country or region, which in my case is United Kingdom. And then for the time zone, we will select London. So Dublin, Edinburgh, Lisbon and London, which is UTC. Then we'll select next. And then it's asking you to select the AP, which will be the primary access point. And you will see that it's got the MAC address, IP address, firmware and the status. So you'll see here the status is primary and not subordinate. So all we need to do on this is click next, and then it will ask you to set up the default SSID. Now by default it gives you the name, so GWN, so that's the group of name for the access points in Grandstream. And then it gives you partly the MAC address. So it's partly the MAC address with the GWN prefix in front of that is the default SSID. So in this case, we'll just change it to MrTimTech. And then for the security mode, you'll see we've got WPA3 already set by default. And then the WPA key mode is SAE, and then the WPA encryption type is AES. For the WPA pre-shared key, that's by default the factory default password. So we'll change this to our usual test pre-shared key. So this is the password that you would use to access the wireless network with. So with that password entered, you'll see then we've got devices. So we've got available devices and also member devices. So with the member devices, this is this access point by default. So this is its own access point. So if you had other devices, for example, that this access point was managing, then or meshing together, for example, then the devices will be listed here. So you could just add those and it will then broadcast the same SSID that we're creating here to the other access points as well. So once we've done that, we scroll down to the bottom, and as you'll see, we've now got complete. So we'll click that. And now what it's doing is updating the service status for the various services that it has built into the access point. For example, this window will then disappear. That's finished updating itself, and you'll now see that we've taken us into the overview dashboard where we've got the number of access points and the number of clients. Obviously this will change from 0 as clients connect to this access point. Then we've got the AP channel distribution, so automatically it's chosen in the 2.4G band, it's chosen channel 1, and in the 5G it's channel 48 that it's chosen, and then in the 6 GHz band it's chosen automatically channel 37. Now you can of course set these channels manually yourself or just leave them as automatic. Then we've also got a table with top access points, so this will be populated as you progress and use the access point a lot more, and then top SSIDs, top clients, and then you've got the alerts or notifications of course. Now one thing I would recommend doing is changing the default password. So to change the default admin password to log into this access point with, into this control panel, all you need to do is go to System at the left hand side, select Settings, then it will take you into the current administrator password and account screen here. So what we'll do is enter the current administrator password, so the factory default one, and then we'll put in our new admin password and then confirm the password and then select on save. Then you will see we've got you have 4 changes not applied. So all we need to do is click on apply to fully update the web interface, and you can see it's applied successfully. So now that's changed the factory default password that we use to access the web interface to control this access point. So we'll go back to the overview, And then if we go down to the next option, you'll see we've got access points. So we can click on status. And here it gives you the status for this access point. Again, channel numbers, channel widths, wireless power, firmware versions, and so on. And also the IP address, MAC address, and also the status for this access point. We can then go into configuration, and if we want to configure this access point further, all you need to do is click on the square icon with the pen, and then you can give the device a name, give it, for example, a fixed IP address, change the LED. So if you like to have the LEDs always on, always off, or on a schedule, you can set those. Band steering, you can use that to select band steering by giving 2G, 5G or 6G in priority. Now by default these are all set to use radio settings. So to access radio settings, you cancel this, go to radio at the left hand side here, and then by default whatever's set in here will be applied to all of the access points that are being managed by this web interface. So for example, you could set the channel width there from 20 to 20, 40 or just 40, and that's for the 2.4G band. You can also select custom channels, which I mentioned. So if you want to not use the automatic channel allocation, then you could actually set your channels manually. So at the moment it's set to automatic there. You can also select it by dynamically assigned by RRM. And again, you can do the same for the 5G band. So if we scroll down here, you'll see we've got the 5G band. And of course, we've got channel widths as 20, 40, 80 and 160. And then for the 6G, we can set the channel width to 20, 40, 80, 160 and also 320. Now these by default at the factory, as you can see, are set to 20 on the 2G band. So the 2.4G band rather. 5G is set to 80 and for the 6G is also set to 80. Now if we go back to the menu option at the left hand side for SSIDs, here you can add further SSIDs. Now this is the default one that we created, so it's MrTimTech is the wireless network name, and the SSID is set to tri-band and it's enabled, which means there's a green tick under Wi-Fi. You can also apply VLAN protocols to this, so if you want to put your users of this wireless network into a specific VLAN, then you can do that. You can also set a schedule so that when users can access the wireless network between certain hours or certain days. The security mode it's showing you there is WPA3 MAC filtering, so you can actually block devices using their MAC addresses from accessing this access point and wireless network. And of course you can go in and change the settings by clicking the pen and the square icon here. So you could change the SSID name, client assignment, security details and so on. So all those could be changed in that SSID option there. Now if you want to add another SSID, for example, all you do is click on add, give your SSID a name, so in this case we'll call this test. Make sure you tick the box to enable SSID, otherwise it won't be broadcasting. Client IP assignment, leave that as bridge. Here you can actually put it in its own VLAN should you so wish. SSID band, you can actually set it to specific bands. Say for example, if you've got smart home devices that just use say 2.4 gigahertz, then you would select 2.4 gigahertz. And then that would just broadcast the network on the 2.4G band. The security mode, now some new devices don't currently support WPA3. Now that seems to be the case with some smart home devices as well. So if that is the case, then you would select WPA2 for example, or you could actually select WPA2 and WPA3. So if your devices fail to use WPA3, then they would go back and revert to WPA2 for the security mode. Then all you would do is enter a WPA pre-shared key, so the password to access this SSID. Make sure you click on device membership, and then what you would need to do is tick this, click the arrow so that it broadcasts this wireless SSID on this actual access point. Now, as I've said, if you have more than one access point, for example, in a wireless bridge setup or a bridge setup or more than one access point on your network, then these should show up here in this list. And all you would do is add them by clicking the arrow button to the right so that this SSID will get broadcast to those access points that you choose. So once you've done that, you would then click on save and it will then create the other SSID. Going into access control, we have an access list option there, time policy, bandwidth rules, and also PPSK, which is private pre-shared keys. Now, I will have an up-to-date video coming soon on PPSK, so keep a lookout for that video. I did do one in the past, but as things have changed and updates have been done on firmwares and so on, I've decided to do another one, so keep a lookout for that video coming soon. We also have captive portal, so here you can, for example, set up a guest portal. Now, I'll also be doing a video on this in due course, so keep a lookout for that video as well. So you can actually use vouchers, set up a splash page, policy list, and so on with the captive portal, so guest portal options there. For the radio, which we've just been into, you can actually set channel widths and channel numbers and so on. So if you want to specifically avoid channels, then you could remove them from the custom channel list there. Now, in security, we've got the rogue AP detection. There's also a firewall option there. So as well as the firewall in the Grandstream GCC devices, there's always a firewall just specifically for access points. So if you're not using, for example, Grandstream GCC or routers or routers, then you could actually set firewall rules up here if you wanted to. Then we go into the service option and you'll see we've got hotspot 2, SNMP, DHCP server. So this can act as a DHCP server if you wanted it to. And then we've got TR069 and L2TP v3 as well. Then in system, we've got settings, mesh. So you could actually mesh these access points together. Then there's also the schedule where you would set up the schedule to access the access point. So if you want your access points only to broadcast, say, during the weekdays or during the daytime and not at night, then you would set up your schedules here for various things like that. Then we've got maintenance. So here you would update the firmware for the device. So all you need to do is copy and paste the firmware server update path in there and then click upgrade and it will then upgrade the firmware. Now you can find the firmware server update paths on the Grandstream website under the firmware section. Then we've got the last option, which is alerts. So here you would be able to configure email alerts, so you get email notifications of alerts and so on. Then the last option in the bottom left corner here is alerts and notifications. So here it's giving you just a list of the alerts. So it's saying controller online on those dates, and these can be categorized by, for example, severe or top alerts, medium, low priority alerts in there. So that is basically it for the Grandstream GWN7672 tri-band Wi-Fi 7 access point. So as I've said, keep a lookout for more videos coming soon where I'm hoping to get one done for the guest portal. So we'll set up a captive portal and we'll also do a meshing with some other Grandstream access points as well. So that will be wireless meshing. So thanks for watching this video. Hope you found it useful. Keep a lookout. As I've said, more videos coming again soon. Take care and bye for now.